European steel and banking empire of a guy called Fritz Thyssen, who was an acknowledged funder of Hitler, and funded through to Thyssen vast amounts of money, this is Prescott Bush, the president's grandfather, to fund Hitler. How did they go from the Weimar Republic, when they were taking their wages home in wheelbarrows, such was the inflation, to a war machine that could take on Europe? Because of this. And after I came out with it, a few years passed, and then a guy who's I think he's the president of the Holocaust Museum in Florida, he came out publicly in America and said the Bush family fortune overwhelmingly comes from funding the Nazis, and even the Guardian newspaper, hello, hiya, all right, nice you caught up, in the last year or two has run stories about Prescott Bush funding the Nazis. And what they were doing was creating the two sides to bring into conflict 55 million casualties, by the way, into a conflict in a war which has led to the change in the global state. That's how it's done. This is what a Nazi said this. I wonder if we'll kind of recognise this from the last few years. Why, of course, the people don't want war. Why should some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war when the best he can get out of it is to come back to his farm in one piece? Naturally, the common people don't want war, neither in Russia, nor in England, nor for that matter in Germany. That is understood. But after all, it is the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it is a democracy or a fascist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the peacemakers for their lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country. Hermann Göring. Abraham Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. Without public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. He who molds opinion is greater than he who enacts the laws. And he could say, he who molds opinion can then enact any laws he wants. Problem, reaction, solution. This is Hitler justifying the creation, that's a later one. This is him from Mein Kampf. All propaganda must be so popular on such an intellectual level that even the most stupid of those towards whom it is directed will understand it. People can be made to perceive paradise as hell, and the other way round, to consider the most wretched sort of life a paradise. On the basic intellectual level, it's the terrorists, and we've got to protect you from the terrorists, so we've got to take your freedoms away so we can protect your freedom. Oh, that sounds good, I'll vote for him. Oh, this is another version now. No problem reaction solution. You don't need a real problem. You just need the public perception that there's a problem. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. No problem. Public perception there was justifies an invasion on a lie. I love this one. Invasion checklist. Missiles, tanks, troops, planes, bombs, ships, guns. A reason. Come on. Hey. I'd say let's have a brainstorm, but apparently that's politically incorrect. You have to have a thought shower now. Let's have a thought shower. True. Bloody true. And because the same people are creating the problem to offer the solution, the same people come up with the problem as well as with the solution. It's kind of strange. This is a picture from 1983 of Donald Rumsfeld meeting Saddam Hussein on behalf of the Reagan-Father Bush administration. And what was he doing? Hello, Sad, nice to meet you, mate. What he was doing was arranging the shipment of chemical and biological weapons from American corporations to Baghdad to be used against the Iranians in the Iraq-Iranian war. Don't take my word for it. In 2002, State Department documents in America came to light, and this is a mainstream newspaper report of what they said. Donald Rumsfeld, the US Defense Secretary, and one of the most strident critics of Saddam Hussein, met the Iraqi president in 1983 to ease the way for US companies to sell biological and chemical weapons, including anthrax and bubonic plague cultures, according to newly classified US government documents. When he becomes defense secretary, he's using this. He used chemical weapons against the Kurds. Yes, which you gave him. Problem, reaction, solution. That's how it works. He was on the board of a European engineering giant called ABB in 2000. And at the time he was on the board, ABB sold nuclear technology to North Korea. When he became defense secretary, he condemned North Korea for having nuclear technology. And these stories, I can't go on about it all day, these stories I could list forever. Problem, reaction, solution. Like I say, we rejected GM food, now we've got a rising food prices and a food crisis, as they say, and now this government is saying GM food could be a solution. And because, like I say, when it's the agenda, they never take no for an answer, and they'll keep bringing it back and keep bringing it back, just like they are with the treaty, which is the constitution in Europe. Then, alongside problem, reaction, solution comes the totalitarian tiptoe, as I call it. This works like this. You know you're going there from the start. But you know if you go there in big leaps, the change is going to be so vast that people are going to kind of look up from the television game show and go, hold on, honey, what's going on? Sorry, honey, I thought you were asleep. I was. Lift their head from the game show, and they're going to say, what's going on? So they do it like that. They go from A to B, and then to D, and then maybe to E. They go as quickly as they can and as far as they can with each step, but not so far that they get a big public reaction. That's how this came about. I exposed the European Union way, way back in those books, and everything that's in them is happening now. This treaty, this constitution, this central, it's all in there. And I have to say, you know, when I hear David Davis going on about the European Union and all that stuff, well, like I said, you know, much earlier in this, whoever's in government introduces the agenda. No, perhaps I didn't, but I've talked so much, I don't know when I have said it, when I haven't. But this is actually worth mentioning. What you notice is, this is how they dupe us in politics. Whichever party is in government introduces this agenda I'm talking about. Whichever party is out of government opposes the agenda. Then we have this farce called an election, and every now and again they change sides. Now, the government that was introducing the agenda is now in opposition. It can't do anything. It opposes the agenda. That which was in opposition, opposing the agenda, is now in government, so it introduces the agenda. And so the common theme is, whichever government of whatever persuasion's in power, the agenda goes on. That's why David Davis and David Cameron and the Conservatives, when they take over from the current Labour government, ain't going to change a bloody thing. And David Davis, who now is against the European Union centralisation of power because he's in opposition, was a government whip whose job was to cajole members of his party to vote in favour of the Maastricht Treaty when the Conservatives were in government, which was an enormous centralisation of power in Europe. One thing in opposition, very different once you get into power and the agenda unfolds. So we started off in the European Union, free trade area, nothing to worry about, good for jobs. But as I expose in the books in great detail, or from the start, where we are now and where we're going, because there's still way to go in Europe, was decided, and it was how quickly we're going to get there. And we went stepping stone, totalitarian tiptoe, to where we are now. And it was always designed to be so. I talked about the Habsburg bloodline being one of these this elite network. Otto von Habsburg was the man behind and the family behind the Pan-Europa movement, which was the instigator of the European movement that became what is now the European Union. He's still honorary head of the Europa movement. That's their symbol. And one of the key people involved in the manipulation of the European Union into place as it is now was a Polish man called Joseph Ratzinger. Joseph Ratzinger was one of the major creators of the Bilderberg Group. All these things interact. The Bilderberg Group has been massively behind the centralisation of power in Europe. Now, when you know the agenda, things that seem on the surface to be fine, okay, take on a different complexion. This is from a national newspaper. It's a map that came out of Europe, which is said to be the way they want to break Europe into regions, because they want the end of the nation state. because they want to break up the unity of a nation state to in unity resist the power of the centre. They want to break them up. So when you hear, for instance, that they are, as they have devolved power to a Scottish Parliament and a Welsh Parliament, and if you remember, they tried to get English regions as well, but they couldn't quite get that through. That's the agenda. They'll come back to that, you watch. The reason is, on the face of it, in the movie, oh, it's to give power to the people. In the secret agenda, it's preparing the regionalisation of this country for this. That's what it's about. Not freedom, but taking it away. And like I say, in America, there's another European Union emerging so fast, which is coming out of their free trade area called NAFTA, and they're going to call it the North American Union. So this is what they want, and nation states will be removed in a Europe of the regions. Now, globalization is exactly what I have been warning about in terms of the centralized Orwellian agenda all this last nearly 20 years. And I do cringe and shake my head when I see people, often of the left in politics, saying what I'm saying about a global agenda for a centralized fascist state is a nonsense. And then I see them pick up their banners and go, stop globalization, stop globalization. What do they think globalization is? It is the incessant centralization of power in every area of our lives. It's the agenda I've been warning about all this time unfolding before us. And this is a massive part that I'm talking about here in the last 20 minutes of Big Brother. It ain't just surveillance cameras and DNA databases. It's all of this combined. And the Labour government in Britain is orchestrating it all globally, please. And this is what I came here to stand in this election to have a platform to talk about. He doesn't want to talk about it, David Davis. Let's sort out England first, he said to someone who asked him a question about it. Well, you ain't going to sort out England, the subsidiary, or one of them, until you sort out the headquarters, where it's coming from. So we have all these protests against the very organisations that this network has set up to centralise power, including the World Trade Organization. What is that? It's been, again, in my books going way back. When it was called the GATT negotiations, it was in my books, and then became the World Trade Organization. It has the power to impose massive fines on any country that breaks the trading laws of the World Trade Organization to defend its own economy. Simple thing. If you want to control someone, you must make them dependent upon powers they have no control over. Once people have control over things that affect their lives, they are in control of their own lives. Once they are in the hands of forces they have no control over, they have lost control of their own lives. And that's why we're having the centralization of power, taking decision-making away from the sphere of influence of people affected by those decisions. The idea is to tie up every nation and every area of the world with codependency on some other part of the world, so that no part of the world has the independence to decide their own destiny. It literally is like getting caught in a spider's web. How appropriate is that? That's what outsourcing, as they call it in America, is. Taking jobs and stuff into India and other places. And British companies buying up foreign companies buying up our basic needs like electricity and gas and water. That's what it's about. Taking control over our lives to a point where we have no influence. This is Big Brother. Not some guy sitting there watching a bloody camera screens. Just one level of it. This has been brought in Microchip